we choose the right format, we leak the information to the...
And then somebody in my house wrote a beat that I really liked. So I thought it was my opportunity to become a video director. And so I wanted to show them that the beat was really good. And that it really inspired me. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to dance to it and make a video, and then I'm going to make them release the song because it's a really good beat. And it didn't happen. So this is what, you know, this is kind of what I used to do in Steve's basement. It was not great. But then it was a way for me to learn Steve's computer, really. And Steve's gay, so none of this shit was working. So, yeah. I got to use the computer anyway, and I made this sort of stuff. So it was kind of frame by frame, you know, it's just making the thing. So I'd cut the background out, and this took days. Like, now it's just a click of a button. But back then, that was like what I did for 2 weeks, you know. And to just make this loop, which is now like a gift, you know, this took me a while. But just that was enough, because it taken me so long to do it. So I started to get really good at seeing beauty in like very small movements, and you know, tried to make how to make impact with very little, you know, in video making. But all this was happening before like Sri Lanka happened to me. So this was me at M.I.A, and you know, this was my dorm, and it was just learning to communicate through small, you know, loops and things. And then Sri Lanka sort of happened, and I went off to sort of film stuff in Sri Lanka, and then was confronted with a lot of, you know, the politics that I was blocking from my existence at the time. And so I kind of had all this stuff. You know, this happened because when I filmed the documentary, I couldn't get it made, so somebody offered me the opportunity to have an art show. So it was basically trying to, you know, use the thing that I learned at Steve's house, which is to make mini loops, and then I started animating the interviews that I'd got from Sri Lanka. So I'd stencil the paintings on the wall or on the board or whatever the thing is, and then I would photograph and animate it so I could actually get forward a 3-minute interview with a freedom bird disguised as art. And really it was just somebody sharing their experience of what it was like in the jungle, which was really difficult to get on television or, you know, in any mainstream media or to the press or anything like that. And I just thought that the Sri Lankan government was so, you know, art was such a minuscule thing to them, and they were completely not interested in it because, you know, they're going for like power, and art is not a thing that is a threat, you know, and it wasn't a threat. So it was the only thing left for me to access and use to talk about that stuff where they didn't know what I was talking about. So it was kind of like, you know, it was a really interesting time because it was like a community that I got embraced by, and I found a home in being able to talk about things that I wanted to talk about, and you know, they were accepting of that, and I didn't have to stand in front of real politicians and have to deal with all this sort of bureaucracy, which is what you know was happening to the footage that I filmed. I just basically got tied up in bureaucracy. You know, I was a powerless person, especially a little, you know, a female who wants to make a film, and it's just like, what the fuck is that? So it kind of got, you know, dismissed, and that's fine. And so I just started looking for other ways. And in the end, because, you know, the fashion-y sort of art scene of London was the only place where I was sort of, you know, accepted to talk about these things, they became the thing that I also embraced and pulled forward through my music when that took off. So it was like a, you know, it was like a really weird, it was a weird thing that happened by chance, you know. And so, anyway, these pieces eventually got sold, and for the first time I had some money, and I was obviously going to invest it back in art, and I was really excited about this. And you know, for the first time I had something to do because I knew all the people at the doll office by first name terms, and that wasn't cool. So it's getting a bit of a problematic situation because I'd walk in and they'd be like, hey, you know, and I was just like, shit, this has got to stop. And so when I had a bit of money, I was really excited, but at the same time, the house that I lived in with lots of other musicians, they decided to get off drugs. And I wasn't on drugs the whole time because that was my whole thing. You know, when you're a Sri Lankan, or if you're a refugee, or if you're a Tamil, or if you're blah, 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 it wasn't an option. You know, just surviving is enough, like everyday life, that you didn't even get to the point where you were apathetic and then come back round to then feeling guilty and then doing drugs. You know, like we hadn't even started that journey. And also I was like first generation Tamil, so I was still functioning on images that I'd already seen in my own lifetime. So I was always walking around the house going, you know, trying to encourage people to wake up and do stuff, but everybody was on heroin, which is the most, you know, which is the most pacifying drug. So, but at the same time, I found it, this is getting into a weird territory. At the same time, I found it that a lot of clever people did heroin, so it was really difficult for me to be like judgmental because they're always really smart and they almost found life like boring because they understood it so well that it was like it was a rebellious act, but from a totally, you know, different thing. Yeah, so it was very polarized, my time in the house, because, you know, I was going from here and I was like, I'd made it because I'd got a further education and I got a degree, and, you know, everybody in the house were you know, they were just sort of like